Greetings and welcome. Jonathan Foust here. Nice to have you here for this live stream, the Monday night live stream. I know there is ultimately no such thing as good or bad, but I'm having kind of a bad hair day, so bear with me. But I'm going to draw on the theme for tonight, which is the ninth of the 10 perfections, or the 10 paramis, which is cultivating loving kindness. So bad hair day, good hair day, doesn't matter, ultimately. I'm going to hold it in loving presence. Before we begin into this meditation and short talk, a thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, to Glenn Harrison, our producer, for streaming this and making it available to you. A thank you to Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader, who leads mindful movement at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Links on my website and Facebook page. We are suspending mindful dialogue for the time being. A big thank you to Ray. Loving thoughts to Ray and Tara. What else? I have no events coming up, just so you know. Maybe in the fall. I'm taking the summer to have summer, working on some projects that I think are going to be pretty juicy. And this is all offered freely. There is no charge. There are no ads. The whole idea here is to make it freely available per the instructions of the Buddha 2,500 years ago. I don't know if he knew about or anticipated YouTube and e-commerce, but if you'd like to make a donation to support this, thank you. If not, that's totally fine. And I do have a newsletter. It was monthly. I come out every couple months. I send a compendium of talks and my best photography. So that's there. And there's also a weekly if you'd like to know what's coming up. So that's available on my website as well, jonathanfaust.com, preceded by www. Okay, here we are, loving kindness. Let's do our meditation. We've got about roughly 12, 13 minutes as a way to kind of center, bring attention into the body, and we'll do a little attunement to loving kindness. So if you like, you might reach your arms up overhead or anywhere you like. Open your jaw wide, see if you can kick in the yawn reflex. And as you're ready, let your eyes close if that's comfortable for you. And it might be nice to take a few moments to acknowledge the act of kindness you are giving yourself right now. To slow down and pause. Just acknowledging in your own way this act of self-care. And you might bring into mind some person, some event, something in your life that you hold with a sense of gratitude and a sense of appreciation. Take a few moments to go through the files. This practice is known as gladdening the heart, gladdening the mind. When you settle on one person, one thing event that sparks a sense of gratitude, take a few moments to draw it in close. If you're visual, can you picture it right now? Is it a still image or a moving image? If you turn up the colors, the contrast, it might make it a little more alive. If you're more of an auditory person, or in any case, you might recall any sounds or words or tone of voice. And exploring the kinesthetic, what it feels like inside as you stream attention toward this person, thing, or event. Is there a feeling or a felt sense that begins to form on the inside? Can you breathe into that, imagining as you breathe in, you're kind of amplifying it like blowing air on hot coals? Can you let that feeling spread through your body? And as you move into these minutes of meditation, you might take a moment to reflect on offering the merit or the fruit, whatever fruit may emerge from your practice, from this time of opening in the presence. Imagine that you could offer the fruit, the benefit, first to yourself, opening into greater ease in your life. Imagine that you could offer the benefit or the fruit to those in your inner circle. Imagine these beings benefiting from this place of stillness and peace within you. And you might let this widen out, offering the benefit, the fruit of your practice to be a benefit to all beings in all directions. As you sense and touch peace, happiness, freedom inside, imagine you could share that with the world around you. And taking some time now to sense where you feel the breath on the inside right now. And can you attend very gently with the inflow and the outflow of breath? Natural, easy, effortless breathing. Can you tend to the sounds around you? To the sound vibrations 360 degrees, making room for whatever arises in the realm of sound and vibration. Can you sense any aliveness in the palms and fingers and thumbs? Softening here, relaxing, and sensing any pulse or tingling or subtle energy. Letting your attention settle on one of these anchors, or an anchor that you might have personal to you. Breath, sound, feeling in the palms. And let this be your home base. Let this be your doorway back to relaxed, open presence. When the mind wanders, can you acknowledge with compassion and gently bring your attention back? Can you sense the two wings of practice, the lens or the wing of wisdom, of clearly seeing and experiencing what's happening right now, right now? And can you sense simultaneously the wing or the lens of loving kindness? This capacity to be with whatever arises and whatever falls away. What is happening now? And can you be with it? From time to time, you might refresh your practice. First, sensing inside, opening into the sense world. Sound, breath, the felt sense. Sensing this quality of awareness itself, the observer, the witness, that which is aware. And sensing this quality of being with, of making room, allowing whatever's here. And you might like to explore shifting gently from a practice of doing, of effort, and gliding into a practice of being, of allowing. Softening your focus, widening your awareness 360 degrees. And as you do so, from time to time, asking, what is happening right now? And is it possible to be with this, to let this be? Is there anything right now that could soften even more? And you might sense again this offering of merit. Whatever benefit, whatever fruit may arise from your practice, offering it to yourself, offering it to those in your inner circle, and radiating out to all beings in all directions. When you're ready, let your body move and shift, adjust. A few words before we transition to this talk. Loving kindness. The capacity to allow, to be, to call on these qualities of immeasurable compassion, kindness, joy, equanimity. May you experience that more and more in your life, and may you enjoy the following talk. Thank you so much. Blessings in your practice. I look forward to being with you again. I don't know if this story is true, but I was touched by it, and I like to believe that it is true. I can easily imagine this to be true. It's a story of a young woman who was really struggling in her life and noticing that her thoughts were becoming darker and darker, and with that, some suicide ideation. And in a moment of crisis, she decided to call the suicide hotline. This is like 2:30 in the morning. And so she called, the phone rang for a pretty long time, and then someone picked up, a man picked up, and she said, I really need to talk to someone. I'm going through a really, really hard time. And obviously he was woken out of a deep sleep. And he said, well, just, give me a minute. And he, kind of did what he needed to do to kind of wake up. And they went into a conversation. And she just sort of spilled everything out in her life. And he listened and asked questions, and they talked, and they talked, and they talked, and they talked for almost 2 hours. Over the course of that conversation, something shifted for her. Just reaching out and having someone acknowledge and make contact and be present for her. And in that shift, she felt so much more ease and so much more hope. And finally, toward the end of the call, she said, I'm just grateful beyond words for the time that you took with me here, and I'd like to make a donation. Can you tell me how I do that? And he said, donation? What do you, I don't know what you mean by donation. She said, well, I'd like to make a donation to the suicide hotline. Your time and your care has been amazing. And the voice on the other line said, this isn't the suicide hotline. You must have called the wrong number. That just chokes me up. Our capacity to open our hearts to each other is an integral part of the 9th of the 10 perfections, which I'd like to talk about. As a review of the 10 perfections, and I've framed them in different ways, but I'd like to frame them as we do the review here just for a minute or so, to think in terms of these 10 perfections or 10 reflections. I like to think of them almost like the 10 reflections of your true nature. To think of them in terms of letting go. And the first is generosity. And generosity is this letting go of greed and the letting go of attachment, the letting go of who you are as a separate self-preservational self. The second has to do with ethical integrity, with virtue. And this follows generosity, and it's letting go of what's unskillful. It's letting go of the behaviors that take you away from what truly calls you in your life. The third is on renunciation, which is it's letting go of attachment to sense pleasure. It's not letting go of sense pleasure. It's about letting go of the attachment and experiencing the kind of the freedom and the steadiness that can arise in the absence of attachment. That kind of leads to wisdom, seeing into the true nature of phenomena, which is all about letting go of confusion, letting go of delusion, letting go of what you're believing that isn't true, letting go of what you aren't believing that is true. This blends right into the practice of wise effort. about taking what you know to be true and then applying it in your life, letting go of all the unskillful actions that are informed by greed or hatred or delusion, which blends into the practice of patience. As you are applying wise effort in your life, a sense of diligence and sustaining attention, it's about letting go of the suffering that goes with it, knowing that what you're seeking may require more of a marathon than a sprint. And it's about that sense of like letting go into the unfolding of your path and letting go into the next perfection of truthfulness. About really, really focusing on what's true and letting go of what isn't true. And this can be very deeply personal. It has to do with unskillful speech. Anything that you do that perpetuates delusion or confusion. And all of this kind of flows into the next one, which is resolve, of determination as protecting truthfulness by strengthening your commitment to waking up. And it's all about a letting go of fear. It's about a letting go of doubt. And that takes us into the talk now on loving kindness. It's about taking that resolve and ensuring it's in the service of being of benefit to others. It's about letting go of selfishness, kind of returning back to generosity. And next week, we'll talk about the 10th, which, as a little preview, is about equanimity, which is about the steadiness in the midst of change, about finding that really, really deep inner satisfaction and happiness, regardless of the externals. So this talk is about loving kindness. On 4 parts. Part 1, what is life like without it? Second part, how do you develop loving kindness and your capacity to receive it? Part 3, how do you express it in the world? And part 4, what happens when you get good at it? What happens when you become more adept at sensitizing yourself to loving kindness, to compassion? And as I often say, whatever you focus on in any spiritual practice, you become hyper aware of what it isn't. When you focus on being present, being really, really moment to moment present, you automatically notice how you're not. And then you begin to notice all the patterns, all the subtlety of all the behavioral ways that you slip away from the present moment. And that can be incredibly valuable. It's not fun, but it's valuable. But in that same way, when you focus on compassion and kindness, you'll begin to notice how you're not. A friend of mine, he went on his very, very first retreat, a 7-day in silence. And silence, of course, has an amazing way of amplifying your thoughts. You begin to notice, and what he noticed was the judgment he had to everyone around him. And as he was describing it, like someone walked by and something in his mind would just go like, nice haircut, buddy. Someone else like, where'd you get those pants? You need to work out more. On and on and on. And he realized how horrified he was. And he thought, my God, do I do this all the time? Do I just sit in judgment of the world around me? And oh my God, is this what I do to myself? Unfortunately, I think that is what we do to ourselves. Although I often like to ask, have you ever looked in the mirror and been critical of what you see in the mirror? Maybe the question is, have you ever looked in the mirror and loved what you've seen there? Been astounded by the radiance and the miracle of how smart and how good looking you are? Chances are, like me, you probably have that kind of baked in negative self-bias. And we're all products of that. Have you ever felt judged or unsupported by your family? Your parents or caretakers? Have you ever withheld praise from another person? Have you ever been secretly pleased at your rival struggling? I think when it comes to cultivating loving kindness, unfortunately, we have to start at the hardest place, which is ourself. We tend to hold ourselves in so much derision. That negative bias is very profound here. There's a New Yorker cartoon of a dog on the psychiatrist's couch. And the caption is, "It's always good dog. It's never a great dog." So I think we all know what the absence of kindness is. Judgment, anger. And it's interesting, a study on relationships, that there's one word that means your relationship may not be salvageable. And that word is contempt. When you hold another person in contempt, it's very, very hard to heal that. And that kind of riveted me. And I could see it in some relationships of people I know, that sense of contempt and just the kind of the dread of, oof. But in myself, contempt for others, contempt for their views, contempt for their expression. This is what we have to overcome. The contempt that we hold toward ourselves and the way that we turn that contempt on others. Particularly in these incredible days of mean-spiritedness and politics. Developing loving kindness is even more challenging, and maybe all the more reason why it's so important. So here's an interesting thing. Here's an advertising. This is an advertising campaign from about 2,500 years ago. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya, one of the original texts. Imagine this practice that could give you these 11 benefits. You will sleep easily. You will wake easily. You will have pleasant dreams. People will love you. Animals will love you. Angels will protect you. External dangers such as poisons, weapons, and fire will not harm you. Your face will be radiant. Your mind will be serene. You will die unconfused. You will be reborn in happy realms. Okay, whatever that is, sign me up. I'll just take 7 out of the 11 would be enough for me. That's the advertising for loving kindness. That when you become more and more adept and when you quicken your awareness to self-kindness and kindness toward others, that sense of ease begins to permeate who you are. You sleep well, you wake well, you have pleasant dreams, people and animals love you. And that sense of radiance and serenity, of clarity, is all part of the practice. Part of the origin of loving kindness, or at least the origin story around loving kindness, has to do when the monks would gather during the rainy season, about 3 months. Everything was just way too wet and soggy to go anywhere. So the monks would gather and retreat together for this period of time. And then all the locals would come together. All the townspeople would support the monks for these 3 months. And the story is that in the forest where they gathered, the beings, the whatever spirits were there, were not happy to have their space invaded, and so they started to express their displeasure through creating all kinds of nasty visions and all kinds of, I guess, psychic phenomena that really upset people. And and many people reported to the Buddha saying, this doesn't feel good. And so he said, well, this time now you'll be armed and you'll be armed with the practice of metta, of loving kindness. The word metta is related to mita, which is friendliness. It's about, and mita is also related to the word sun. So it's about tapping into that spirit of friendliness. And so they began these practices, and this pleased the beings, the spirit nature beings, and all was well, or at least better. So here's the kind of the classic Metta Sutta. And the language is a little bit archaic, but you might like to just kind of listen to this, and you can translate it for yourself. If you like, you can close your eyes, and you might take 3 deep breaths. And just allow these words to resonate in your awareness. Let them resonate in your heart. And again, the kind of the original text, they kind of go on and on a little bit. So it's sort of opening yourself to a language that's a little bit different. May all beings be happy and secure. May they be happy-minded. Whatever living beings there are, feeble or strong, long, stout or medium, short, small or large, seen or unseen, those dwelling far or near, those who are born or those who await rebirth. May all beings, without exception, be happy-minded. Let none deceive another, nor despise any person whatever in any place. In anger or ill will, let them not wish any suffering to each other. Just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life, even so, let each cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. Let thoughts of boundless loving kindness pervade the whole world, above, below, and across, without obstruction, without any hatred, without any enmity. This, they say, is divine abiding here. So if you like, you can open your eyes. And I think one of the points in this particular sutta is like nothing is accepted from loving kindness. Nothing. It's about filling the space, everything within the space of consciousness with boundless loving kindness. And I love that phrase, it's just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life. Let each cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. That's a practice. That's got some juice. And this is a big, big distinction in the practice of loving kindness, which I'll talk about a little bit more, which is about moving from the conceptual practice of loving kindness to an embodied practice of loving kindness. This practice of loving kindness, or metta, or friendliness, has very, very deep roots. The early Upanishads, which is really pre-Buddhism, talks about the 4 immeasurable states of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And what's fascinating about this is that when you really investigate kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, you find that it's not only within you, but it's outside you, and there is no edge. It's a beautiful exploration. It's simple. It's very, very simple. But the big, big challenge is, how do you keep it alive? How do you keep this practice of tuning in to kindness and compassion and joy alive? So, as I always joke, so much of the classic phrases, may you be happy, may you know peace. So many times I found myself doing the practices, but it's kind of like, may you be happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering, disconnected. The challenge is to connect it with a sense of aliveness inside. Like any practice, it's something that you cultivate. It's something that takes time. Someone recently shared how, with all the stress that she's been going through, of how hard it's been, and at night that she kind of brings her hand to her heart, and kind of offers this sense of well wishing, and how quickly she said it kind of slides into self pity. So there are many, many ways that this sort of portal into loving kindness can lead into challenges. One particular thing that's really, really interesting that I find is, like, if you imagine when it's hard to offer yourself loving kindness, if you could think of someone you really know and love, what would they say to you? And that can be a really powerful way to kind of tap into a genuine sense of care. A student and friend was telling me a story of how he was living in California and was told that his grandfather's life was coming to a close. And he moved back to the East Coast to be closer to his grandfather. He kind of gave up his career because he loved his grandfather so much. And they spent a lot of time together at the end of his life. And he said there was something about coming back and really deciding to be with his grandfather, to really let his grandfather know how much he meant to him, how much he appreciated him. He said it was a really transformative time in his life. It really matured him. And then after his grandfather died, he did some DNA testing, and he found out that this guy was not his biological grandfather. But when he found that out, he said it just didn't matter at all. It had no bearing on the fact whether he was genetically related to his grandfather, that the purity of his love for his grandfather and that they had for each other was absolutely pure. And I love that story because it really points toward tuning into the kind of the essence of connection and empathy. And of course, when you really tune in to the times of greatest suffering, it's also really interesting to see our capacity to not be there for each other. You know, if you've ever lost someone close to you dies, have you noticed how for many, not everyone, but many, many people, what they tend to do is their response is really nothing about you. It's about whatever they say that is sort of like their own way of self-soothing, particularly around death. When my dad died a number of years ago, the responses were really interesting. Someone saying, well, I'm sure your father's in heaven looking down on you right now. Another person said, well, I know how you feel when my mother died, and then went into her story. Or someone saying, well, you know, he's in a better place now. You know, at least he's not in pain now. I've really learned a lot from my own experience of kind of going through that loss. That when other people when they lose someone close to them, the most satisfying response I got from those are from those who would say, I'm so sorry. You know, I'm sorry for your suffering. You're in my thoughts. You're in my heart. And someone had a beautiful response when my dad died. When they said, you know, I'm really, really sorry for your loss. When you're ready, I'd love to hear more about your dad and what he was like. Wow, what a beautiful way to respond. So that sensitized me to how can I respond to suffering, not so much through my filter, but through a direct connection with kindness and compassion. Loving kindness has to do with developing empathy, which is the capacity to feel what another person is feeling, the capacity to sense what the other person needs that they may not even know what they need, to imagine their point of view. To me, this is sort of the magic of metta, or loving kindness, is the capacity to role reverse. And it's a practice. When I first started practicing or getting exposed to the teachings around loving kindness and metta, I was really touched by this idea of it being both kind of the formal practice, which to me gets old pretty quickly, but the challenge to make it alive. And I ran across this phrase, which you may have heard, called stealth metta, which is offering loving kindness in a way that's really, really subtle. And one of the ways that I have done it, I don't do it that much, but occasionally I remember and I do it. It's just really, really juicy and really fun, is at the supermarket when I'm getting groceries. And that is just to kind of sensitize myself to the people around me, and then just to be a well-wisher, just to kind of see someone trying to figure out what kind of yogurt to buy, and just, may you be well. May you feel safe from inner and outer harm. It's a really, really cool practice. And again, it's subtle. I'm not telling people that. But there have been times when I'm kind of going through the grocery store and just offering silent stealth metta to people. And it's not uncommon when people will they'll kind of stop, or they'll look in my direction. A story that I've told before, actually I wasn't going to tell it, but now I will. The story this woman tells of being on a bus in an inner city. And someone looked like a homeless person got on the bus and was obviously had psychological issues, was really disheveled and pretty confused, and he didn't have the right change that the bus driver needed. And the bus driver got impatient with him, and this man started getting very, very agitated and very angry. And his agitation, his anger became so, it sort of just filled the bus, and everyone felt the anxiety. People were looking toward the back of the bus as a way to kind of get out if they needed to, and so forth. And she as well was feeling very, very alarmed, but something inside her thought, actually the phrase that came to her was like, no one's praying for this guy. And so kind of in the midst of her own personal upset, she just silently offered these phrases. May you feel peace. May you feel safe from inner and outer harm. May you feel happy. And after maybe just a few minutes, he calmed down, he got the right change, and as he was shuffling with all of his belongings to the back of the bus, when he went by her, he stopped and he said, "Thank you. I feel much better now." I don't know if that story is true, but I like to believe it is. I know of so many other stories of the profound impact of generating not just thoughts of loving kindness, but a felt sense of loving kindness to others. It's a training. And sometimes we kind of get this feedback that it works. But it's about learning how to incline the mind toward loving kindness. Habitually, what we do is when we are feeling lost or upset, we tend to look outside of ourselves for refuge. One of my best buddies, Darnie is her name, known her for many, many, many years. We go way, way, way back to my early ashram days. And just one of those people, is an absolute sister. And not too long ago, I just found myself wanting to call her up. There's just something about the affirmative quality of her presence, her quickness to laugh, her just her general affirmative presence. And so when I felt this urge to call her, I just sort of felt this real deep sense of warmth kind of arising inside. And then I remembered that Darnie died 2 years ago of breast cancer. And I could just feel that draw to the outer refuge of love. And I realized that what I need to do is to call on the inner refuge of love. And so that then became a sense of just sort of like internalizing my appreciation for her, what her presence felt like for me as someone who was such a profound ally. And this sense of the outer refuge and the inner refuge becomes a really profound part of practice. It's recognizing how quickly we look outside of ourselves for happiness. And from what I can tell, these practices all point toward finding that resource inside yourself. And again, it's not about denying yourself all the outer expressions of love and all the beautiful sense pleasures, but it's about being aware of your attachment or your conditioning around them. And this points toward what we'll be talking about next time of equanimity, which is your capacity to be happy regardless of externals. So the classic practice when it comes to this practice of loving kindness is to first reflect on a benefactor, someone you know or imagine really cares about you. And it can be anything. It can be a grandparent, it can be a best friend, it can be a pet, always good to go with pets. If there's no one in particular that comes to mind, it's sort of like even imagining that there's this benevolent force that cares about you. And about tuning in to those qualities. And then it's about filling yourself, offering yourself kindness and compassion and joy. And then it's about spreading it out, first to a neutral person, someone you have neither attraction nor aversion toward, and having them as a practice. I've told this story many times, but my first month-long retreat, we were doing 45 minutes a day of this practice. And the first week was benefactor, second week was self, the next week was neutral. And so I chose our retreat manager, who struck me as a completely unordinary person. I had no aversion toward her. I had no attraction toward her. But every day I would just be wishing her well, wishing her ease, wishing her safety. About 3 days into that week, during the retreat, she walked into the room to see if there were enough cushions or something like that. And my heart leapt. It was like, oh, my beloved has just arrived. And I realized, oh my God, I'm falling in love with the retreat manager. It was such a powerful affirmation to see that where the energy flows, where the attention goes, the energy flows. As I was holding her in such warm regard, my whole being was beginning to kind of open to her basic goodness. So from there, then we can turn our attention to the difficult people. But I thought we might just take a few minutes to kind of reflect on these practices. If you like, you can close your eyes. And you might just take a moment to slow down your breath. Could you relax on the out-breath in any way right now? And if you would, bring into mind someone who's a benefactor or an ally. It can be very helpful to make it specific. A person, an animal, a pet, a plant, or simply imagining some benevolent force that deeply cares about you, that knows you well, that laughs at your jokes. And take 3 slow, full, deep breaths. And allow yourself to sense what it feels like to be cared for, to be appreciated. And you might explore now what it's like to offer this being either these phrases or a variation of these phrases that works for you. May you feel happy. May you feel safe from inner and outer harm. May you feel free from stress and suffering. And take a moment to sense the ease with which that offering flows to this one who cares for you. You might now turn your attention to yourself, and if it's helpful, you might bring your hand to your heart. There's something about anchoring this posture that can be really helpful. And just feel or imagine your willingness to open and increase your capacity to receive kindness. May I feel happy. May I feel safe from inner and outer harm. May I feel free from stress and suffering. And if you would now, imagine your capacity to feel this inside, widening and deepening. Imagine your cup filling. And if you would now, let yourself just call some individual people forward in your life and let them present themselves spontaneously. And you might imagine one at a time offering some variation of these phrases. And I'll just repeat a few of them, and then you can just do this internally. May you feel happy. May you feel safe from inner and outer harm. May you feel free from stress and suffering. Taking the next minute to individually make this offering. In the next minute, feel the space inside. And imagine the space outside you, in front of you, behind you, to either side, above and below, extending out beyond the furthest stars. And imagine this well-wishing. May all beings feel happy. May all beings in all directions feel safe from inner and outer harm. May all beings in all directions feel free from stress and suffering. And sense, is it possible to feel the space around you and all beings and intimately include yourself? And feel, imagine your capacity for happiness, safety, and freedom, deepening, broadening, widening. If you like, you can deepen the breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. And this path of awakening is both already here and filled with adversity. This practice of attuning to loving kindness is about learning how to respond to adversity with kindness. And perhaps the hardest place is with ourselves, to begin with yourself. Think of that moment when you look in the mirror, how instantly critical you become. I think every minute that you can spend on easing that self-criticism can open up a deeper recognition of who you truly are. One of my favorite poems from Derek Walcott. If you like, you can again close your eyes. This path of awakening is about recognizing who you truly and really are. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. And again, if you like, you can open your eyes. In these times of so much duress and so much suffering, I think we all want to be able to respond from love and from kindness, as opposed to anger and judgment. This practice of loving kindness is all about filling your cup. When your cup is full and overflowing, your effectiveness in the world is very, very different from when it's only half full. So the question then becomes, how can you fill your cup? What is it that you need in your life to feel more full, alive, refreshed, plugged in? And this is where these practices are so, so powerful, because they truly are about the awakening of these two wings of practice. The more you settle, the more clarity you cultivate in your life, the more you will see things as they truly are, beyond your story, your embellishments, your preferences, to really see what's real. And then the more you will begin to see and recognize how you can respond to life, to move from anger, judgment, blame to this sense of allowing and spaciousness, to open to celebration, and to the possibility of embracing the mystery of this life. Just to close with this classic quote from Sri Nisargadatta, which is been such a rudder in my life. Wisdom tells me I'm nothing. Love tells me I'm everything. Between those two, my life flows. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. Many, many blessings to you. May you meet the challenges of your life with love and kindness. May you transform your challenges into new insights and new possibilities in your life. Thank you again. Happy, happy trails. Take good care.